all of those things that are undermining our country and destroying our country are being fully funded by this House of Representatives right now. We have the erosion of our fiscal house and the corruption associated with government spending that is completely out of control here in Washington, D.C. Now, I could go on and on about how much money we're spending, how it's too much. $33 trillion in debt is just the sort of thing that's Banana Republic level of spending. You know, we talk about corruption and prosecutions being endemic or the defining characteristics of a Banana Republic. Spending money that you don't have is also a defining characteristic of a Banana Republic. So there's a fair argument we're in deep in that regard. But as I've been highlighting to you over the last few weeks, and I was out last week, I was traveling, there's an inflection point. There's an inflection point now in the House of Representatives because Congress, and the House specifically, under Speaker McCarthy, has been unable to get its act together. McCarthy promised in the beginning of January, back when he was trying to gain support to be Speaker, that there would be regular order in the budget process. And I'm going to go slowly through these terms and such because I think it's important to use the terms they're using so you understand that the terms generally are a distraction from what really is happening. And they talk about regular order, and what they mean is that Congress considers 12 or so appropriations bills, right? So government gets funded through 12 pieces of legislation, one, let's say, on military or veterans or agriculture, etc. And McCarthy promised all that would be done by June. And they'd be sent over to the Senate, and the Senate would work on their versions of it, and there'd be a conference. And we'd figure out what the spending would be about now. But what happened? They were able to get only one appropriations bill through. Right now they're facing getting none through. I think maybe one more smaller one was passed by the House. I don't know if the FAA appropriations, but the Federal Aviation Administration, the disastrous administration, did get full funding. I'm not aware of any significant reforms, but that's another matter. And we're facing this new cliff, this emergency created by incompetence, inaction, and failures of leadership next week. And it's this continuing resolution fight. This is what they call a continuing resolution because they don't have their appropriation bills all in a row and ready to go, or they should have been already done by now. They need more time. And in order for the government to operate without these appropriation bills being filed or set up and enshrined in law, they need a continuing resolution. Now, the length of the continuing resolution is going to be in dispute. And but for conservatives and honest Americans and patriots, this is important because it's a leverage point to ensure that everything that you hate gets defunded as a reason to vote for, in exchange for voting for this continuing resolution. Meaning, right now, for instance, Congress is fully funding the criminal prosecutions of Trump that are unprecedented, abusive, political, and outrageous election interference, both through the Justice Department and Jack Smith and his continuing efforts to destroy the political opposition of Biden and jail Trump in the middle of an election next year. Justice Department funds continue to flow to support the offices in New York City run by Democratic politicians and Fulton County, Georgia, run by another Democratic politician who are also seeking to jail and prosecute Trump and other Americans for exercising their First Amendment rights. All of that is being funded right now. And next week, as soon as next week, because the fiscal deadline is for the year, I think the fiscal year ends in October 1st. They have to get this done before then, is the deadline. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't vote for a continuing resolution without at least those matters being dealt with. On top of that, the Biden administration continues to abuse their powers to censor American citizens. The border crisis has metastasized even further, as if it were possible under Biden, where millions are coming across the border, thousands a day, all subsidized and furthered and enabled by your tax dollars. The Biden administration lets these people cross the border illegally and then uses your money to move them around the country. And the Biden administration wants to spend dollars doing that, basically enabling the invasion, enabling the largest operation of human trafficking in the history of the world. Hundreds of thousands of children trafficked through this operation, and it's fully funded with your dollars. So everything you hate about the Biden administration in terms of policy, and I'm not just talking, let's be honest, I want to just limit this to misconduct, right? All of those things that are undermining our country and destroying our country are being fully funded by this House of Representatives right now. Now, this military bill that they've been fighting over and weren't able to pass this week because they still can't even figure out how much money they want to spend collectively, in toto. That had some reforms of the type we're talking about. We were talking to Andrew Clyde, a congressman from Georgia, a few weeks ago here. I interviewed him. And, he has an appropriations measure. I'm not sure where in the process it would come up that would defund the Justice Department's prosecutions of Trump, et cetera. To me, that ought to be the price for any continuing resolution. And there are many other reasons to vote against a continuing resolution because it's no way to run a railroad, right? Just going to vote for trillions of dollars without checking or having any reforms in place just to keep the government operating. That's not the way it should be. And now the danger is to get the continuing resolution through, none of the issues that I'm talking about are addressed, and then they run up against another deadline. The appropriation bills are unlikely to be done then. And you know what they do? They just cram it all into what's called an omnibus, or minibuses, they call it. I mean, I just love these terms that they use to distract from what they're doing. An omnibus is basically funding the entire government, and I know it's not literally the entire government because other spending is kind of authorized in perpetuity, like Social Security, et cetera, in one bill. This is the way it's been working in Washington for at least 10 or 15 years. I don't know the exact number, but as long as I can, I can't remember the last time there was like a normal budget process. And so imagine being a business and running your budget this way. Well, we're going to write a check for what we spent in the last 12 months plus a little bit extra for inflation. And we're not going to check anything as to how that money's been spent, whether it's being spent with, through waste, fraud, and abuse, or being impacted through waste, fraud, and abuse, or in the case of the Justice Department just being allowed to do whatever they want with tax money, no matter how abusive and political. So that's where we are. And my view is, and I had a press conference, or I didn't have it, I participated in the press conference with members of the House Freedom Caucus who are done with this as well. They're the conservative rump group in the House who have been kind of trying to slow this train down by objecting and slowing it, and maybe even shutting the government down in part. And and I don't really participate in too many press conferences on the Hill, as you may have seen. But I thought it was important for me to represent you through Judicial Watch on Capitol Hill to tell Congress that they need to do their job, and they need to ensure that our tax dollars aren't being used to try to rig an election, jail innocent Americans, censor your rights, your First Amendment rights, destroy our sovereignty and destroy our nation through an invasion, abuse children through transgender mutilation and the promotion of that, abuse our military, kill our unborn, you name it. This will be or is set to be funded. So this is what I suggest you do. And I did a video. I'm going to show you the video. I was fired up. I was so fired up. I was traveling, and I had a big meeting with some conservative leaders and activists. And we were out in Phoenix, and at an early morning plane to catch, and I'm like, I got to get this video out because I'm mad. I think people need to know about this sooner rather than later. So I literally rolled out of bed, tried to make myself presentable, and this is what I had to say. Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Don't forget, Congress has an opportunity over the next 2 weeks to shut down the prosecutions of Donald Trump, to defund them. Don't let Congress fool you. Don't let House leaders fool you. They can do it now. They should do it now. They can protect Trump from these abuses. They can protect other innocent Americans from these abuses. They can stop the Biden Justice Department's interference in our elections. They can do it now through this continuing resolution process. Call your members of Congress and share your views at 202-225-3121. Well, pretty simple message, and you can see I was pretty darn tired. But we have a country to save, and I encourage you to, you'll probably see this video, at least once during the weekend and maybe next week. You got to call your members of Congress. Call your congressman and call your senators. And it doesn't matter if your congressman disagrees with you or not. The volume of calls and what people are calling about are all noted by members of Congress and members of the United States Senate. They all want to hear from their constituents. It's valuable data for them to have. And if you call your House members and say, this is what I want, and share your views. And I'm not telling you what to say. I mean, you're all adults. Be polite, be professional. And many of you may even disagree with me. You may say, Tom, you're all wet. We just got to get past this and fight another day. But either way, should it take place without your participation? I don't think so. I mean, there are a lot of good congressmen who are trying to do their darndest to at least mitigate the damage caused by this massive government spending, who are focused on changing or passing restrictions on the abuses of government through this process. So I encourage you to support that, to the degree you agree with me. But if you don't, you have your First Amendment rights. I'm not going to take them away from you. 202-225-3121. That's 202-225-3121. Call. If you don't get through, call again. And believe me, even if they don't pick up the phone, the volume of calls is noted. And if you've called already, call again, because the things change from day to day. I mean, there were lots of, I'm not going to get into the weeds as to what happened this week about what didn't pass or what could have passed and who voted when against what. The fact is, they're at loggerheads, and the challenge for Speaker McCarthy is whether he's going to rely on Democrats working with liberal Republicans basically to fully fund the Biden agenda. With cuts, maybe with some haircuts. But all the abuses, they get a free pass on. You may have seen Attorney General Garland this week testify before the House Judiciary Committee. He obviously was dishonest and, in my view, provided further evidence of perjury and false statements he had made earlier about his handling and mishandling of the Biden investigation and how that was rigged. And, you can go and look at it on C-SPAN. There's been lots of commentary about it. But what I think is notable is that he didn't want to really ask or answer anything substantial. Well, why would he bother? He's facing no consequences. He's gotten all the money he's asked for ever, and extra. And he's facing no real consequences from this House of Representatives in terms of defunding, defanging, and protecting American citizens from the deep state that he's been running on behalf of Joe Biden. So, when they go up on the Hill and they're basically just playing games and fighting Congress and there's no real answers, well, they don't have an incentive to provide accountability and justification under the rule of law, because there are no consequences. And right now there's an opportunity for consequences. And Congress doesn't want you to believe anything can be done about all the terrible things that are happening now. That's not true, it's false, and it can be done as soon as next week. So I encourage you to participate. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.